This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Forget the frustration of picking commerce platforms when you switch your business to Shopify, the global commerce platform that supercharges your selling wherever you sell. With Shopify, you'll harness the same intuitive features, trusted apps, and powerful analytics used by the world's leading brands. Sign up today for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/tech, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/tech.
Brooks Running has a new shoe for you runners out there. Did you hear that? Better turn up your volume. In fact, turn it up to the max. Introducing the all-new Ghost Max. It's got all kinds of things to make your knees and ankles feel protected, like Max Cushion, Max Soft Landings with DNA Loft V2 foam, and Max Smooth Rides with their Glide Roll Rocker. Feel better on your run with Ghost Max. Learn more at brooksrunning.com.
This is Central Texas Living with Ann Harder.
Hello, I'm Ann Harder. Welcome to Central Texas Living, the podcast. Today we're going to meet a father and son who've recently moved back to Texas after nearly 2 decades living in the Philippines. Derek and Canon Ross here in Central Texas with most of the family. 2 adult kids are settled elsewhere, understand. And Derek has deep ties to Central Texas as a member of the Wichita tribe, the Waco, Tawakoni, and K'iche' family of Native Americans. And it's wonderful to have you both here. Derek, you reached out to me because of your son, Canon, who is 20, right? Your interest in photography, as well as your experience in the Philippines. So, Canon, most of your growing up, you were born in Texas, but yes, got out of here as fast as you could. It seems like, and went to the Philippines.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I was born in Smithville, Texas, outside of Austin. Yeah, but I moved to Manila when I was 2 years old. Yeah, it's been crazy.
Okay, so you've lived there for a day, and that's because you're a missionary. Is that right?
We're missionaries in the Philippines to college students.
That's wonderful. And so many things I want to talk about in the time we have together. But first I want to talk about Canon, because as a 20-year-old, you're here in Central Texas and you've set up a business. And it's kind of interesting because you're interested in photography and back to the basics, back to film photography.
Yeah. I think it's crazy because like, photography is like there's so much creativity with it, but with film you can get so much more creative, I think, because it's so analog and like you have to take it slow, and like we were saying outside, it was like everyone in photography class back when it was a thing in the 80s and the 90s, 70s, everyone was like dreading it because it was.
Oh, yeah. I took it at Baylor. Dr. Adrian Vaughn was my professor. I had to take photography as a journalism major. And, we learned the whole darkroom thing and, all the things you had to do. I remember my project was a picture of my cat. It's burned in my memory as well, my picture of the cat. But I have had friends, who are professional photographers who, at one point were like, I got to throw away all my expensive equipment. I mean, there's no point in even keeping it because everything is digital.
Send to Canon Ross at.
Well, so as a youngster, and you're still pretty much a youngster, Canon, but when you were still in the Philippines, you were kind of working as an intern and a helper for a very famous photographer. Tell me about that.
Yeah, his name was Pat D. I got it through a teacher at my school, just a random connection there. But Pat D is one of the most famous wedding photographers in Southeast Asia. Before that, he was doing fashion and everything with the celebrities in the Philippines, and anyone who's like anybody, he was doing their weddings. And I just happened to meet up with him somehow and got an internship with him. But I did over 80 weddings with him all of 2019 and into 2020. But yeah, it was crazy getting that. Like, we would do weddings from 8 a.m. in the morning till like 12 p.m. at night.
I guess culturally, a wedding celebration maybe in the Philippines is a little
Yeah, it's
maybe
quite
different
different.
than-
Yeah, they're. I mean, in the Philippines, time is not somehow as valuable as other parts of the world. So any kind of event or something like that, church even, things like that go a little bit longer. Even social gatherings, lunch or coffee, it's just hours. It's not like time.
leisurely.
Yeah.
You did take life leisurely, but you want to document it all. So you had probably thousands and thousands of pictures to go through, and I know he needed help going through all that.
It was really crazy because I went from doing photography for my high school yearbook,
Right.
and then was shooting weddings for the most famous people in the Philippines, and it would be fun because we always watch TV commercials in the Philippines, and I would always sometimes see at the weddings the guy at the tuna commercials or some random shampoo commercial, and it would just be funny to see those people and just giggle to myself, and that's so weird that I'm getting to take pictures of these people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I would assume though that your professional photographer friend was using digital, right? He
Yes.
wasn't shooting stuff on film. So what got you interested in film?
Okay, he's partnered with this guy in the Philippines, Francis Perez. He's the founder of Sunny 16 Film Lab in Manila, and they shoot film actually for weddings. The guy Francis Perez, and Francis and Pat used to be in business together for photography, but then they both split up and did their own thing. But he started a thing called Sunny 16 Lab, and that's where I first used a darkroom and started using film and working with them, and it was super fun. And it was just crazy.
How did you come upon your equipment? Because we were just talking about how so many people just ditched it. I bet a lot of it's in the landfills, but expensive equipment. Were you able to find some really cool cameras to use?
When I first got my first film camera, it was older people in Texas who were just have it in their closet, and photographers, and they never used it for the past 30 years. So different people would give me their cameras.
We were hanging out with a friend of ours one evening, and the guy said, "Hey, he found out Canon was into photography, and he said, I'll be right back." And he left, and he was gone 30 minutes, and he went home, and he got a briefcase with his film photography, camera and all that, and lenses and everything, and just brought it back and said, "Here, I want to give this to you. I haven't used it." And it looks, it was almost brand new, but he was really Canon into film photography way back at that time. And he just gave it to that was one of Canon's biggest, kickstarts.
Yeah, of course, the name Canon, is one of the huge brands in cameras.
Yeah, actually, his name is Cannon, and Canon is Canon is the company, but the name also goes back to my Wichita heritage. There's a famous, he's Kiowa, Wichita, it's another tribe. He's Kiowa, and his name was T.C. Cannon. He died in the 80s, but he was probably the most famous Native American Indian artist ever until now. He's just so famous, T.C. Cannon. So that's where he got Cannon's first name.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Now, you told me when we were chatting before about his middle name. Tell him what his middle name is.
Yeah, so because I'm Wichita, excuse me, because I'm Wichita, I speak the language. So it's Waco, Tawakoni, and Kichai. So those are the three bands of people who make up the Wichita tribe, which would be people who spoke Wichita. Excuse me.
Of course, everybody knows Wichita Falls, Wichita, Kansas.
Yeah,
so this is a
tribe.
Huge, mass of land that the Indians lived on.
The Waco, Kichai, Tawakoni people. Actually, if you go somewhere east of Dallas, there's a Lake Tawakoni.
Oh yeah.
If you're Tyler, that area.
Sure.
So that's
I've heard of
so
it.
the north of Texas, all of Oklahoma, and part of Kansas, all the way to Kansas City, was land. It's 18 million acres that belong to the people who were Wichita. So that's where our heritage comes from. And so when Canon was born, each of our kids.
And
were born.
he's your third born, right? You have
Yes.
two older.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so when each of the kids were born, they all got, we named them with Wichita names. Nasa Kitney is when it's the Lord's Day. That's our oldest daughter. Wackets is actually a family name, and it's the middle name of our second daughter. And then Canon's middle name is Hawadik Ishihidia. It means he's a blessing. It's a different language.
It's beautiful.
So it sounds different, like any other language. But yeah, his name is Canon, and that's his middle name. And each of the kids succeeding after him, Eli and Ada, all have Wichita names.
Well, let's talk a little bit, Derek, about your past. So where did you grow up, and what led you then to mission work?
Yeah, so I grew up in Anadarko, Midwest City, Oklahoma City, Lawton, which is actually the area when the Waco Indians were escorted out of Waco, they were taken to the city of Anadarko in Oklahoma. And if you look at the state of Oklahoma, it's there are many tribes that are there now. Maybe there might be 20 or 30 tribes that live in and around Oklahoma somewhere. But the Wichita tribe is people who were indigenous to that specific place. And so when those people were moved from Waco and other parts, Kansas City, those people were taken to Anadarko. Also, that's where I was born, in Anadarko. So that was 1964. So I'm 57 years old now. But so I grew up in that area, Anadarko, Lawton area, and then somewhere around junior high, my family moved to Aransas Pass, and so I pretty much grew up in Aransas Pass, Port Aransas,
beautiful
as a
part
young
of the state.
person, yeah, and then joined the U.S. Marines and went off around the world, different things. Came back, met my wife in Houston, got married, got involved in church, youth things, and different things with the church. And somehow there was an opportunity to go to the Philippines with the IMB. It's a Southern Baptist
International Mission Board.
So we were IMB missionaries when we first got to the Philippines, and the story continues. We're 18 years there. Canon was born there. Canon was 2 years old. Our son Eli was born there. Ada was 5 months old. She's 18. So the two people who we're leaving behind here in Waco will be Canon, who's 20, and then Ada, who's 18. She'll be going to McLennan probably.
But leaving behind, meaning you're going back.
Yeah,
your
we're
mission
probably going to leave. If I can accomplish some tasks that I'm trying to work on for a project in Manila, in partnership with the Hope Center, is a June Hunt's thing. And I don't know if you've ever heard of June Hunt.
Yeah.
So she's kind of famous in biblical counseling and this kind of thing. She set up a center in Plano, Texas, and we're copycatting kind of something that she did in Manila. But so we're just trying to get Canon launched into photography. And I was going to say one thing that he said, I've learned, I think one of the things that he could share today would be things that people aren't aware of or people aren't even thinking about. As an example, he said yesterday, if you take a digital picture, then, actually you can see it right on the spot. That's one thing, but you can also set the camera to take 7 pictures in a row, so you can't hardly miss. Like if you're trying to get to kiss the bride, and you're like, oh, can you kiss her again? I missed that, with film, you might miss that exact moment, but with the digital camera, you can pick and choose any sequence of that one shot where, and I think Candace said this a while ago, when you shoot a film photography. And I'm watching him sometimes. I'm not really a photographer, but I'm watching him because he's really looking through the lens and really kind of, there's a moment that he's really taken that shot, and it's timed, it's well thought out, and it's different than,
Right. The artistic nature of being a photographer really comes into play. And I understand you want to help develop a community of photographers. Tell me about that, Canon.
Yeah, I think there's already a bunch of students from Baylor and McLennan who are film photographers because they're taking that in school. But
I didn't know they were still teaching that. Really?
yeah, but like I want to, I want to find all the people here, and not only show them Waco Film Lab and that there's a place for them to get their film developed and work together and just create stuff together, but I want to hang out with those people and like just get to know them, because like we both love doing the same thing. It's just there's not many people who do that anymore. And I think that there's also so many people who want to learn how to do that, who don't know anything about film.
Well, yeah, they may have, Uncle Joe's camera up in the closet. And,
exactly.
And it's still perfectly good. They just don't know how to use it.
Yeah, that's true. And also, like, it's just so much, like, you can learn so much with film photography because, like, you're taking your time, like my dad said, like, to compose the shot. But digital, like, you're just taking as many shots and then choosing the one you like out of the 1,000 you took. But with film, you have 36 or 24 exposures on a roll of 35 millimeter, and you really have to time out what you're gonna like do with all those different pictures and like take your time to get good ones. And it's super like awesome to like just take your time and do that. Yeah.
And you're also looking for models as well?
Yeah. I'm also looking for models in Waco or anywhere near Waco that just want to collaborate and take pictures together, create something together, or even just like students who want to hang out and take pictures. There's so much in Waco. Like, I like the Alico building, but there's so much more in Waco to take pictures of.
Oh yeah.
I can't wait till that bridge, the hanging bridge, is that what it's called?
No, the suspension bridge.
Bridge.
Same kind of idea. I see. Well, so that kind of leads me to your growing up years were in the Philippines, and now you are a few months literally in the States.
Yeah.
Have you had a kind of an adjustment?
I have. Americans are a lot different. There's nothing like...
Well, more fast-paced. Obviously, we've already talked about that.
Yeah, I think Americans are more fast-paced, but like I think Waco is a little bit slower than the big city. I think that will be the biggest change for me is I'm used to living in Manila, which is like millions of people, and then
24 million people.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And Waco, it's not a small town, it's more like a small city, because there's a lot of things here and there's a lot of people here, but I think it will be a big adjustment, and it has been a big adjustment, like not having like hundreds of people walking on the streets or like taxis everywhere and stuff. But I've done a pretty good job. Like, I think my younger sister will have a harder time.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Change all the changes and stuff.
Well, now you talk about school, but you homeschool your kiddos?
Through about high school, yeah.
Okay. So, but tell me about your school that you went to in Manila.
It's like an international school. It was originally a missionary school only called Faith Academy, and it was a lot. Over the years, it's changed more like just an international school because there's business kids there now and nonprofit kids and just a bunch of different international kids like from all around the world. So actually our school is 60% Korean. There's a lot of Koreans at our school. Really? Yeah.
TIAA is on a mission. Why? Because 54% of Black Americans don't have enough savings to retire. So in collaboration with big-name artists like Wyclef Jean, TIAA released Paper Right, new music inspiring a new financial future. With 100% of streaming sales going to a nonprofit that teaches students how to invest. Stream Paper Right now and help close the gap.
This episode is brought to you by FX's Feud, Capote versus the Swans. Inspired by actual events, the series tells the story of Truman Capote and the women he betrayed. The original housewives. They were society's most elite women, rich, glamorous socialites who defined a bygone era of high society New York. From creator Ryan Murphy, this drama series features an all-star cast, including Naomi Watts, Demi Moore, and Diane Lane. FX's Feud premieres January 31st on FX Stream on Hulu.
Derek, let's go back to talking about the Indian your Indian connection, Native American. Is it incorrect for me to refer to them as Indians? It should be Native Americans?
It depends the person. So it's really...
I mean, I don't want to offend.
No, it's okay. Yeah.
But of course, Waco, the name of the city, obviously taken from the tribe that lived here. In fact, when we lived in a part of Waco, had a 300-year-old oak tree on the property, and my neighbor said, "Yeah," I said, "Probably they camped underneath this tree." It's kind of neat to think about. But in 1986, there was a court case that did determine that 18 million acres were taken illegally from these tribes.
Yeah, that's all this language is also, it depends the person. So, like if you talk to a group of people who are proud of their heritage, they would say stolen lands. But then if you talk to someone else on the other side of the spectrum, that might sound offensive. And so it really just, whether it's Native American, American Indian, indigenous people, all these language, terms, it's hard to say what's valuable to each person. But yeah, the tribe, the Wichita, Waco, Tawakoni, Kichai people, had actually been in a case with the federal government for a number of years prior to 1986, and it was just at that time that the government, the U.S. government, acknowledged that the land was Wichita land, and so there was a settlement. And it sounds like a lot of money, but it's really, actually, we're trying to buy a house here right now, and so a house costs somewhere between $100,000 and $300,000 or $400,000 or whatever you're. So and that's for a lot that's 50 foot wide by 125 foot deep. You get So when you talk about 18 million acres, that's a lot of property, and actually it encompasses the whole of Oklahoma and the southern part all the way up to Kansas City, Kansas, and the northern part of Texas. And so everybody knows that Dallas and Oklahoma City and all those cities are within that area. And so, but it's not just those cities; it's also the mineral rights for the, like in Oklahoma, Kerr-McGee and on and on and on. And so it has so much value. But the federal acknowledgement was that the land that was taken away was about 18 million acres, and so the U.S. government paid the tribe not what the land is worth today or at that time in 1986, but what the land was valued at the time that the land was taken away, which was approximately $1 an acre.
Oh, okay.
So while $18 million sounds like a lot of money, it's really not, and so if you just think about the value, but like a lot of those conversations in American history, there's not anybody present day to blame, actually, and there's nothing that really can be done you can't go into Dallas and say, okay, this belongs to the Wichita people. You can't do that. But I think the history part, and I'm talking to some local people, Fiona
Bond.
Bond.
Yeah, she's been on this program.
And other people like her, people from Baylor, Stephen Sloan, the oral history professor.
Yes, Dr. Sloan, yes.
I'm supposed to do a podcast with him at some point.
Oh, that's
on
cool.
The oral history.
Yeah.
So I think letting people, education, whether it's a Black history or Hispanic culture in Texas or Native American history, I think education is really the value. And actually going back to photography, this is something I've been telling Ken. And when he takes a picture of a family portrait today in Waco, let's just say it's your family or that family, people, when you look at that picture, when you think about what you're doing, it's kind of valuable. You want something on the shelf that's my family. But if you look at historically photographers, and Canon can talk about this more, but as an example, what is the name of the photographer? Golly, I'm drawing a blank. In American history, there was a famous photographer who was shooting Native Americans. And when you look at that today, it's 100 years of photography, So today, it's Wichita people, it's Comanche, Kiowa people,
sure.
But it's history today only because 100 years has passed. And so when you look at your family portraits, it probably doesn't have that great a value. But if we fast forward into the future, people will look back at wow, look at this picture. It's from 2021. Wow, it's so old, And so I'm telling Canon all the time that look at your work, and he's already thinking, differently than when people look at pictures. When I look at a picture that's digital photography and I look at a picture that's film photography, I can barely tell the difference. But he can, at the moment, just go, that's really digital, and I'm not really into that. But the value of the art that he's doing, the value of the history that he's recording,
and
that he's
really
and
preserving
recording.
a craft, really preserving something for the ages that could have just been tossed aside because of the new technology, which is great because you've got computer programs that you don't even know if anything you're looking at on a digital picture is real or not, because you can totally change the background, you can do all that stuff, and I guess you know how to do all that as well, huh?
Yeah, I know how to do that, but also, like you were saying in the hallway out there, like, what do you call that? The guy who does the glass?
Oh, right. The etching. I forget the name at the time, but yeah, Brigham Mayfield, local photographer. And he got the camera from a fellow who'd been in business years and years and years ago and brought that back where it's an acid etching on a piece of glass, which is what takes the image. Like so that. It's a reversed image. Yeah, it's really, you need to get in touch with it.
Yeah, that would be so cool. Like you're saying, like just like preserving that craft, like that's completely different. Like that's even older than film photography.
Oh, yeah.
Like that's even older. Like that's what the guy was using to photograph those Native Americans.
Exactly.
He wasn't using film.
Exactly.
And there's just so much to learn.
Yeah. Even I'm learning I'm like, what he's talking about all these things I'm learning. If you take a picture, there are some settings on a digital camera that you can adjust or whatever.
Try to make it look real.
Or that can be altered or adjusted. But when you're shooting with film, there's the speed of the film, depending on what speed of film you're using, the shutter speed, the light, light meter. He's holding up like a program on his phone that's like a light meter. I'm like, what are you doing? I don't even know what he's doing, and so he's seeing, what is the light in this room or this evening or whatever and so I'm amazed at all those things.
There's a lot to know about all that. And I think it's wonderful, Canon, that you've taken on this as kind of your mission in a way.
Yeah.
So how can folks get in touch with you? What do you have, like a website?
Yeah,
Do you have an actual location?
I do not have an actual location right now, but I have a drop-off location at MC Art Supplies. I partner with them, and they're a drop-off location.
For
and also
developing.
Yeah. You just drop off your film there, and I'll pick it up and develop it and give you your digital scans and everything. But I'm also looking for drop-off locations that people I can partner with, coffee shops or anyone who's just willing to.
Record store.
Yeah, anything.
Yeah, vinyl. We're getting back to that.
Yeah, that's also.
Who knew?
Yeah. Like everyone's getting back to everything analog, like vinyl and records and film and like music. Like people like old music and like there's just so much we can learn from all of that. Like it feels so different. Like when you listen to old music or compared to new music, and like there's so much we can learn from it, and then there's so much we can like just learn new things to, like our parents listen to that. Like it's just cool. Like you were saying, just find an old camera that was in your parents' or your grandparents' closet, or listening. My mom has a record collection, and I was like, wow, this is so cool. And that's what got me into records. And I was like, this is so much fun.
Well, I'm glad. That's encouraging to me to know that somebody 20 is getting back to the old things.
And I was going to say also, Canon can talk more about this, but there are people who are kind of famous on YouTube, and if you watch Netflix, you can find programs, or not just Netflix, but Amazon Prime, and about Harry Benson and other. There are YouTubers who are young people, like 22 years old, like Canon. What is the name of the
Willem Verbeek or Joe Greer? Like those are different film photographers who are younger people. Joe Greer's a little bit older, but Willem's about my age. And YouTube, like they're just like only shooting film, which is so cool. Like that they're going back to that too.
And so these are people who are famous on YouTube. So if you look up William Burbeck, you can see, and he's doing tutorials about, scanning the negatives and developing the film and lighting and all those kind of things. And so I think Canon's learning at YouTube University, the listeners of your program, if they're interested in film, they can watch, follow some of the things.
You can learn so much. just Google it. But you do have a website. Do you have a?
Yes, I have a website, and I have Instagram and Facebook for Waco Film Lab.
Waco Film Lab.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Waco Film Lab, and there's our prices there and everything and what we offer, and also in the future what we will offer. We will have a location at some point,
sure.
and
a
studio, and I want to make a creating space for people where they can go make their own prints with enlargers and dark rooms and make their own prints. And
presently we have a membership or an office space at Waco Work. So if people want to meet Canon or come in, one of the ideas is because Canon has digital disposable cameras for sale that people can just buy and have that film. But also one of his thoughts is the community thing, bringing together people at Waco Work as an example, and then the meetup. And so Canon has, 4 or 5 different film cameras, point and shoot. So if an individual wanted to come in and meet up with Canon and buy a roll of film, pay for the developing, and use the film camera, then they could go out and shoot for 30 minutes that particular roll, and then in 2 or 3 days, 4 days, Canon could return to Waco Work with the digital scans after he's developed the film. And I think that's another thing.
That is neat. That is a cool idea.
Yeah, and if you go somewhere in a retail, there's a couple of places where you can have film developed in one of these, retail stores here in Waco. There's a few, but that might cost you about $20, or a little less. Takes a couple of weeks. You don't get your negatives back, and it's just a long period of time, And actually, I think it's funny because if you think about digital photography, or people take pictures on their phones,
their
iPhones,
phones are,
so you
they're
can instantly
fabulous
see it.
Tools, yeah.
Can you imagine if you went out and shot a roll of 35 millimeter film and you had to wait 2 weeks to see what the pictures even look like?
Right.
Canon can do it in like 3 days, 4 days.
Well, and the value of the collaboration of getting to have that interaction, like musicians that collaborate and guitarists learn licks from each other, and all that kind of stuff that's the value here as well of this community you'd like to put together. So again, folks can reach you. Do you have like a Facebook page as well?
Yeah, Facebook and Instagram for Waco Film Lab. Just follow us there, and there's a lot you can check out there, and also our website. But yeah.
Oh, this is great. Thank you both so much, Canon and Derek Ross. It's been a delight, and love to have you back sometime, see how things are going.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and if somehow there was an interest, I can talk more about my Wichita heritage, the language. My heritage is directly connected to the Christian experience that I have in my life.
Right.
The church that I'm from in Anadarko is 146 years old, and was for about 100 years. They were having church in my language in Wichita. So actually, I've going back to Canon. I've taught him, like growing up in church. If you're just as an example, Amazing Grace. If you know how to sing like that. So the church that I grew up in, when my dad was born, his first language was Wichita. So when people in Waco think about like Native America, it's so far, it's not, because my dad, his first language was Wichita. The Waco people are speaking Wichita. That's my dad's first language that he's growing up in, and so as an example, when he was in church as a kid, the message, the preacher is preaching in Wichita, the songs are in Wichita, but I think the church has survived for 146 years old because it's very closely connected to family and culture. So the Christianity is perpetuated, but it's and then also a slave shared the gospel with a Creek Indian who was about 40 years old, and that Creek Indian became a missionary at 40 years old to the Wichita people. So the church that I grew up in as a kid was kind of indigenous. It wasn't like a white person trying to communicate the Christian message.
What do you think of when you think of a missionary?
Yeah. So, and I'm carrying that into what I do.
Yeah.
I'm not so much trying to be American Christianity to Filipinos in the Philippines, but so back to the 146 years old church, my dad grew up speaking, the language, and so in church when I was a kid, and I've taught these things to Canon and our other kids, I'm singing Amazing Grace in my language. And this is, if I can just a little bit.
Yes, please.
So I'm not a good singer, and I actually, you're kind of a choir singer. Is that your background, right?
Yeah, I was singing. Yeah.
So you'll probably be a critic,
No, I won't. Not at all.
But as a kid, I'm singing, like if you're singing songs in church when you're a kid, I'm also doing that, but they're Wichita songs. So as an example, Ni wasta wa waritsoka nata yase hai ho wa kuishi nagitskari araho tante ikya. Amazing Grace. So we're singing those songs in church as a kid, and
understanding the lyrics. I mean, it's
not
like if we were to sing Latin, we wouldn't really know what we're singing.
And I think the thing that perpetuated that made the Christian church in my tribe strong was the lyrics are actually different. It's the melody that's the same. So the words are actually completely different.
So it's not a translation of Amazing Grace.
No, not really. And so, but that's what's important about sharing the gospel or communicating Christian ideas. We need to keep the Christian thought, but how it rolls out, culturally may look different, in different parts of the world. And so going back to Waco Film Lab, if you look at the logo for Canon's on his Facebook and Instagram, Waco Film Lab, it's a Wichita grass house. And so if you go to the Taylor Museum, there's a Wichita grass house. I think it's a frame. My dad was interviewed by the Waco Tribune just a couple of years back, along with the president of our tribe, Terry Parton, and one of our leadership, former president of our tribe, Gary McAdams. But the Wichita Grass House is the traditional dwelling that we lived in for probably 2,000 years, in North Texas, Oklahoma, and southern part of Kansas. So that's Waco Film Lab.
Yeah, and Waco Film Lab, so you can see the logo. And as you mentioned, the Helen Marie Taylor Museum, make an appointment. You can go and see that in person. Before we leave, I'm going to put you on the spot. Will you speak a blessing over us to wrap this up?
Yeah, I would just say Canon's name, it's Hawadik Ishihiria, and that you would be blessed, So yeah, that's that anybody listening would be blessed.
The feeling is mutual. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, both of you, Derek and Canon Ross, for being with us today and sharing your lives with us.
Thank you for having us. This was
awesome.
awesome.
So much.
Central Texas Living is part of the Rogue Media Network family. Be sure to check out their other shows at roguemedianetwork.com. Please rate us 5 stars on iTunes and anywhere else you get your podcasts. Join us again soon for more Central Texas Living, the podcast.
Hello, and thank you for tuning into KNOW Waco. I am your host, Debbie, here to help you get in the know about Waco. So you may be asking yourself, why am I here? I'm here to be your tour guide through Waco. I'm here to tell you all the goings-on in and around Waco. I'm going to give you the 411 on what's happening, what's going on, and what events you should go to. This is your host, Debbie, signing off. Now that you know, go. Just go, Waco.
You are going on a run.
Are you building a new business while managing a family? Are you tired of trying to balance home and work and everything seems to be coming up short? Then there's a podcast made just for you. Baking Your Business from Scratch is where we create the perfect recipe for building a successful business while managing your home and family with love. Come join us and see for yourself.
This has been a Rogue Media podcast.